I think what I tried to give him was sort of like silent assassin. You know, when you watched him in the early years play, he'd come out there. He wasn't really that big, whatever. And he'd say, "Hey, you got this nice little guy here, you know, whatever." In the meantime, he's coming for the kill.
This is the Sean Miller Podcast, presented by Deer Park Roofing. Now, here's your hosts, Paul Fritchner and Adam Baum, with the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, Sean Miller.
Welcome into another episode of the Sean Miller Podcast. Paul Fritchner alongside Adam Baum, the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, Sean Miller, and maybe one of our most requested guests to my right, the father of Sean Miller. John Miller is here with us today. As always, we start the show by thanking the presenting sponsor, Deer Park Roofing, the official payroll sponsor of the Sean Miller Podcast, payroll partners, and our friends at TGE Solar. John, it is great to have you here at the Cintas Center. It's good to see you. First of all, happy Father's Day, a little bit belated earlier this week. Happy Father's Day. But I want to start out with something that I read out of an article that was written about you from your old school Wingate. There was a profile written about you a few years ago, and you gave this quote. You're talking about John Calipari, and you said, quote, "If I called John Calipari and said, look, you can get on this TV show out in California, he's going to get on a plane and go get out there. You couldn't get Sean Miller to get on that plane for nothing. He just wants to be in his gym, coach his guys, and do what he's got to do. And now you're sitting on his podcast. How about that?"
Well, I would agree. That's sort of the way it is today, too.
How are you doing, John?
I'm fine.
Good?
I'm fine, yep. Still moving around. I'm happy and doing a lot of basketball all the time.
Still coaching?
I kind of moved away from the coaching and kind of
Training.
general manager, a little bit of training right now.
Yeah.
And just basically keeping busy. Keeping busy.
So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what your training is and what you're doing specifically.
I have a lot of players coming to me, or dads, moms need training, and so I hook up with them. I work them out an hour, and just depends on their age or their advancement as to what we do. But we work hard and old school. We're not fooling around. We're not throwing too many tennis balls off the wall and that type. Just basic, fundamental stuff that we learned over the years.
Well, John, I think the best way to start this here is to give everybody an idea, if they don't know about you, and the successful is not even the right way to put it. The amount of success that you have had in the coaching ranks in the high school level. I mean, you had a 583 and 222 record in high school. You in the postseason alone, you went 104 and 29. You went at one point a streak between 1990 and 1999. 111 game winning streak. I mean, incredible numbers, John.
All league games.
Yeah.
You know, it was, somehow it just emerged, and it was difficult. Aliquippa, which is a pretty famous school, basically football, but also very good basketball. Ty Law, you know, those type. You faced the big fella.
Sean Gilbert.
A lot of NFL
Mike
football
Ditka,
guys.
Daryl Rivas.
Rivas
You
was
said Ty Law. Yeah, it's amazing in a small little community. Yeah,
Blackhawk High School.
Well, so Blackhawk and Aliquippa are probably 30 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe not even from each other. But yeah.
Sean, you have your dad here in this week for Father's Day. How good is it to see him, to be here and more, you know, from going from Arizona back here? He's kind of a little closer here, being from Pennsylvania and everything. So
yeah,
good to be around.
For sure. You know, when we were in Arizona, my mom and dad, they would come out, I think just about almost every year to visit until we hit COVID. And then there were times when they came out for as much as maybe a month, getting out of the cold and, you know, going to the beautiful weather out there. But the distance and the time, you know, when you're a 3-hour time change over the summer months, and just generally, you know, it's 10 o'clock in the evening here and it's only 7 there and vice versa in the morning. It's not as easy to communicate as you think. Being back in Cincinnati, closer to Pittsburgh where they live, it's been good. I think we've probably communicated more, seen each other more in the last year and a half than we did over a much longer time frame at Arizona. Yeah, for sure.
John, the very first episode that we did of this show with your boy was basically all about Sean's path into basketball, how he fell in love with it, how he got into coaching. And I think the obvious route to go here is like, what did that look like for you? How did you end up being a basketball coach and falling in love with the game the way that you did?
Coming out of college, I just wanted to be a good high school coach. I came up from Carolinas and back to the hometown. And I was just trying to like teach myself to become a better coach. And then he came along, and so I ran into this George Shower guy, Crazy George. He had a book, ball handling charts and stuff, so I got that book and started him dribbling just in the basement. And it just led to, he became very, very proficient at what we were doing. We went to 5-star camp. George was there one night. I wanted George to see him, kind of to spur him on, to keep him, not getting bored. And George really took a liking to him. It was like, wow, this little guy can go. He going on at 5-star, and one thing led to the next. And then pretty soon it was like, the Dapper Dan Roundball Classic with Sonny Vaccaro. And then you moved on to eventually the McDonald's. But we were always working. Anything that we were doing was to become a great player, become a really good player. He could dribble, be the best dribbler, make the lay, and it just led one to the next. But all of a sudden, like something happened. And he sort of, it turned into like almost like a Pete Maravich, ball handling and all this stuff. But I always went against the way Pete was. We wanted to be kind of reserved, be respectful, work hard behind the scenes, and we're coming to get you.
The Miller way.
And that's sort of how he grew up.
Yeah.
I was really, really strict. He was my first one. Arch, he got away with, Sean will always tell you, he got away with way more than what this guy did. And, it just led to pretty soon as a player. But he had to make a big decision right in around 8th and 9th grade because it was like television. We were doing some stuff there, and they wanted us to come out to the West Coast, and I just want to play. And so we sort of got away from the fancy stuff, and we weren't really even doing like a lot of fancy. It just, this drill led to 2 balls, and then it led to 3 balls, and pretty soon he could dribble 4 of them. It wasn't that. It was like becoming more proficient, really highly skilled with the balls. And it helped him as a player. Once he got in around 9th grade, it was like time to move on. He really didn't even want to do that. I pushed him a little harder because, we get down to Kentucky, I might make a couple $100, NC2A, anything that we did with the NC2A, it was a no. He's in 4th grade. Can we take a couple $100 for doing this thing? They didn't have an answer. Like, no, you can't do it. It might block his eligibility for playing basketball like 10 years later.
Could you imagine that in today's day and age?
They blocked everything we were doing.
Yeah.
If right now he was coming up, I don't know if he'd have made it to college playing basketball because, the money part of it would have been, off the charts. There's no telling what would have happened. I don't know.
It's a different game today.
Yeah, so, and then, along the way, Arch began to show up. So now we had him. He was our ball guy. So we would do a clinic someplace. Arch would be he'd be carrying the music box. I had him over on the side. Sean would do his deal. We'd move somewhere else. And he just sort of grew up that way. Worked extremely hard. Bob Hurley, I can remember Bob Hurley Sr. We were in the Pocono Mountains. He brings Bobby Hurley over. Says, sit down right here in the first row. He said, do not move. I want you to watch this guy. We got Bobby Hurley watching Sean, right?
It worked.
It was just one of those, we would travel here, travel there, Carolina. Well, we were really the only non-Tar Heels to ever get into Dean Smith's camp.
Yeah.
So if you could imagine guys in 5th grade, 6th grade, and he's in front of 500 Tar Heel campers. And we got to go 1 hour. Our show, our clinic would be 1 hour. I can remember one time Rick Pitino was kind of recruiting him at the time. He was maybe a high school junior. We went up there. He did his individual instruction camp. It was like the first one at Providence. And we did our thing for about an hour and 10 minutes. It was hot. 90 degrees in this gym at night. Finished it up. He did a great job. I mean, we knew Pitino was after him, so we had worked extremely hard for 2 weeks before we went up there. I mean, I'm talking every day. We're killing. And then we get finished with it, and Rick Pitino says, all right, we're going to do this. And he uses Sean as his demo guy. So he went an hour and 10 with me, nonstop. And then Rick Pitino just killed him. He went another hour with Pitino. So he went like 2.5 hours in front of all these guys. We finished up. Pitino just looked at me afterwards and he said, you realize what he did? I go, yeah, just another day at the ranch for us. You know? And that's how it ended. We got in the plane and went home, kept moving. And,
Dad, one thing that that I think would be good to hear you talk about is, your own experience playing both baseball and basketball, coming out of high school, finding your way to a junior college, and then going from a junior college to Pfeiffer and some of the coaches that you had, I think really just as you've talked about it over the years, really impacted you in a positive way of this is what a good coach is like. These are the characteristics that this coach had, because as much as it was basketball for you, you played both sports. Your coaching, you talk about coaching, a lot of times you refer to the coaches you had on the baseball field, and then all of a sudden now, like how do you become a good teacher and why do you become a coach? I think that your track record going back to at that point in your life, has really stayed with you the entirety in terms of your coach. I know just as you've shared with us over the years of just do this, don't do that. This is what I learned. This is important. This isn't important. A lot of times you'll use an example of something that you learned even as a baseball player when you were in your early 20s.
Well, coming out of high school, I was going to go to Eastern Kentucky. My coach had gone there, and he had me set up. I was small. I was like 5'8", but I could score. I was really quick. And then this coach down there got fired, right? And he was gone. And so all of a sudden, his scholarship wasn't there. So this other guy that I knew said, I got a junior college down here in Charlotte. You want to go? You can go. So they just packed my bag, one big bag. I'd never won an airplane. Got in an airplane, went down there, and I went to Wingate. And had a couple really good coaches, Bill Cornell, and I began to just learn like a lot different. I was a Yankee. I'm down there in Charlotte. They couldn't. They were having trouble like actually understanding me at the time. They were just calling me Yankee. I'm like, I didn't know what was going on half the time, right? But when it moved over to Pfeiffer after that, I had a good career at Wingate. As a matter of fact, when I went to try out, the coach didn't even know who I was, and I went to try out, and my high school said, yeah, I'll write you a note and let this guy. I said, nah, I'll make it down there easy. So I tried out with a team. I didn't make the team. He cut me, and so I go home at Thanksgiving, and it's like, how'd you do? How you doing? I told my high school coach, Joe Frizz, they cut me. He said, you're kidding. And I'm like, no. So he wrote. So I go back to school, and the coach calls up and said, hey, I'd like you to come back down, mess around here with the team. 4 weeks later, I was starting. That's how that one worked out. He just, he took his football manager, And so then I moved on to Pfeiffer. And like with the coaches, I had a guy at Pfeiffer, baseball coach. His name was Joe Farabee. If you look him up today, he's unbelievable. He really, truly impacted me. I mean, he was sort of a guy that, like, you know, you practiced, hit the whistle, you run from the dugout to, I played shortstop. Run, sprint, full tilt to the shortstop, turn around, right? Whistle, boom, back in. The center fielder was sprinting to center field. That's how he was. He was just old school. We always had these major league scouts there, you know, at our games. We had 2 major league pitchers, you know, on our team. And so I learned a lot from this guy. Like, if you practiced in your practice uniform. So he gave you 2 practice uniforms, 2 game uniforms. When you practice, you did not take your shirt off. This is Carolina, you know, 90 degrees. You practice the way, you know, he was just an old school guy. Or if you had a hole in your sock, if you were in the dugout, he said, hey, take that sock off. Boom. He had another one for you. I never forgot this guy. And it's just, I learned a lot of, you know, things that, like, when I started coaching, I applied them.
Yeah, you took those.
But this guy was true. If you look him up right now, Joe Fairby, they had something on him. He lived to, I think, 102. He just passed away maybe a year or so ago. But like 300 guys came back. You know, his former players.
Mike Martin.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my roommates was Mike Martin at Florida State.
Wow.
40 years, making the big dance in baseball, right? And I can't believe that he never won it. But he was there every single year, Mike Martin. But I think learning from the right people, I mean, if you say me coaching right now, it's Joe Fairby, Coach Fairby. And some of my teammates, we had 2 major league pitchers, Billy Wynn, Joe Barnes. They both pitched in the majors. They were at Pfeiffer, this little school. NC State, Carolina, they did not want to take a chance in playing us in baseball. And we were really proud. My senior year at Pfeiffer, we were good in basketball also, you know. I was just a 5'8" guard the only thing I can say is I was quicker than him and I was quicker than his brother. I could beat him up until about 10th grade, and then it was over.
He's right. You know, I think the other thing that I wanted to talk about today is, you know, for almost decades, especially when I was growing up, and then when you were a lot younger and playing, and then becoming a coach, we all of us that were trying to get good at the game of basketball were in search of legendary pickup games. You know, growing up, you'd say, hell, outdoor court, summertime, shirts, skins, winter stays on, courts lined up, players from all over the area driving in, and they want to play on this court. That was the thing. You know, you think about New York City, you know, a place like Rucker Park, and just we can go to any city. When I was at Arizona, people talk about in LA, the legendary games at UCLA where the pros would play. And sometimes even on the outdoor courts, Lorenzo Romar would describe like who would be there. Wilt Chamberlain would show up. You know, Magic Johnson would show up, you know, regularly playing these pickup games. And when you grow up where we grew up, north of Pittsburgh, it was hard to find that type of pickup game. So to be a good basketball player, you know, you had to err on the side of skill, and you had to find another way. Not that there weren't pickup games or competition, but if you were really judging us on where's the best competition, Pittsburgh is not going to pop up anytime soon. So, you know, I think one of the things that, you know, you did, Dad, is, you know, you created a mindset with all of us of how important it is to be skilled. And what I find fascinating is if you then look at the last 20 years, but in particular the last 10 years, I think Steph Curry, just him alone, flipped a lot of different things. I think European international influence just across the world in basketball with the skill level, that right now, if I judge what I just finished talking about, that to be a good player, we're in search of pickup games. Today's player, they're in search of skill. They're in search of a personal trainer, a shooting coach. Our players will get in the gym for hours at a time and work on their game, their craft. It's how they've grown up. What they don't do nearly enough of, or not anywhere near what we would do or what used to be, is the shirt skins pickup game. Winners stay on. I mean, sometimes you almost have to organize it for them to participate. And it's almost like a completely new generation of players. However, the skill level, the shooting, and people rewarding that, it's amazing how I really believe this, that you were way ahead of your time and ahead of that curve, because you guys may or may not know this, but in Blackhawk High School, I think the class that I graduated with was maybe less than 300. So it's a graduating class of 275. You know, it's not, you have to live in the district to participate at Blackhawk. So it's not like it's a Catholic school or a private school where you can recruit. He coached Jim Canamesa, who at one time led college basketball in three-point percentage. Developed him, coached him. He coached Dante Calabria, who played at North Carolina, who at one time in Dante's career was leading or led college basketball in three-point percentage. He coached Arch, my brother, who at one point was leading college basketball or led college basketball for a season. Certainly multiple seasons he was up there, maybe led the ACC in three-point percentage. I didn't lead anything, but I was close. And if you look at free throw percentage, the skilled thing. But if you just think about a single school district, Blackhawk High School, that you could say that you've coached 3 players that at one point in their careers led college basketball in three-point shooting, it's pretty remarkable. It really is. You know, he won 5 state championships in the state of Pennsylvania. 5? 5,
All
right?
3 of those guys he just mentioned won the state title,
Right.
too.
Yeah, that's
Dante,
yeah.
Canamesa, and Arch all won.
But so I'm going to start with that because, look, I'm on the other side of it, right? I'm a college basketball coach, and you'd be amazed at some of the conversations that I have with, Coach, how do you develop your players? You know, how do you develop shooting? And I've been in back and forth talks with people. Sometimes it's a parent, sometimes a high school coach of like, you know, don't you need a specialty coach? Or like, sometimes, coach, you may be a good coach, but you don't know what you're doing shooting. You know, don't you need a little help? Let's outsource somebody and bring them in from the outside to maybe help this player become a better shooter. And that always is a hot button with me because I don't have the time to get into what I just said, and that is I feel like I learned from the best. Because, you know, again, all of us have what we call a track record. You know, I think a lot of people take a lot of credit for this is what I can do to help you become a better shooter. But if you pin them down and say, could you give me some examples? Some can give you more examples than others, but I don't think there's a better way of talking about a coach who truly understands how to make someone a better shooter than somebody who did it at the elementary school level, the junior high level, the high school level, and then when they leave them, so now they're out of the nest, they go on to do the things that I talked about, you know? So having said all that, Dad, just to kind of give you the beginning of it, if you would give advice to a parent, to a coach, and you start talking about, this is what I know is required to become a shooter, a better shooter, potentially a great shooter, where would you start? And by the way, I left out Micah Mason, who didn't play for you, but you really were influential in his training. And I believe Micah at Duquesne led college basketball in maybe three-point percentage or three-point makes. So you're tied to 4 or 5 people, you know, young guys that you developed. So with that is your track record. I would love for you to kind of give it to like, look, this is the building blocks. This is the absolute of what I believe and what I know works. Becoming a better shooter.
I would say right now, my youngest grandson right now, he's in Texas. I can't spend any time with him. And I'm working with him here at the camp. Right? He's a camper. He's having fun, whatever. And this morning before camp started, he and I just went in the back gym. But for me to get this little guy to understand, like, forget about everything else. We're just going up against the wall, and we're doing these little tiny drills. And I know he's looking at me like, Pap, this is crazy. You know, like, I want to get out there and start, you know, but he's already developed a little bad habit. He's got a little twist in his thing. I'm trying to tell my daughter, like, if you don't get this corrected right away now, he's not going to be able to shoot, you know? This Mason, I would say anybody that's listening to this podcast, if you have a young guy coming up right now or a gal, go to Mason Elite. If you go to that will put you right on the right track, because you're going to see all these little tiny drills for someone who's in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, almost an 8th grader. And he has it, you know, he got a video, they got it taped. And I started with Micah as he was in 2nd grade. What happened was I trained his dad, because I couldn't be with him all the time. So I'm telling his father, you must work on this. You must work on this. He'd come back to me in a month. We would talk about some other, you know, and as he got older and started coming up through, he became unreal shooting the ball. He's like a Curry. As a matter of fact, he was tracking his record there coming out, and came back to Duquesne. But long story short, he has a young guy coming right now. You're going to hear about this guy one of these days. Isaiah Mason. He's in Pittsburgh. I will stake anything on this. He's a 2nd grader going to 3rd right now. He's getting 6, 7 threes in like a grade school game.
I can't comment. It's an NCAA violation. Okay. So we're just got to listen.
So what I'm saying to you guys, though, is you must start young. And it's not like 1 day out of 5. It has to be 4 days out of 5. You were working on these little tiny mechanics. And then once you get that down, then you can't trade. It's like the golf swing, right? I can't hit it straight but if you don't get that swing down early and right, I got to believe like Tiger Woods' son, he's got the swing down pretty good. He's doing his drills.
I think the other thing, though, is the influence of recording what you do. You know, so, you know, for example, he was the phys ed teacher and the basketball coach. A better basketball coach than a phys ed teacher, I believe. If you had study hall, remember back in the day, you go math, English, you have a free period study hall. He would write you out a hall pass, give it to your study hall teacher, and you're free to go with him. What you do is you go with him, though, and then you're shooting. But one of the things that he was always big on, and I mean, when you think of today, journaling, mental health, losing weight, gaining weight, creating good habits, they talk about the importance of like journaling, right? Again, I think you journaled long before journaling was even a thing, and that is, don't just shoot to shoot. How many did you make? Where'd you shoot them from? Record them. And what it did is it gave you the discipline and the track where you looked and said, I haven't missed in the last 7 days. Like I've done it 7 days in a row. I've done it 15 of the last 16 days. I've done it 100 of the last 102 days. By the way, I've now made 1,000 shots, you know, and it started to become almost like peer pressure with us under him as a coach, in that, how many shots did you shoot today, Paul? You know, if you would look at him or me and say, I don't know, then I'd be like, you're not serious, you know. But if you would say, I shot 300, you know, then it would be like, he's on track. He's one of us, because it started to become a source of pride that we would shoot a couple hundred a day. I mean, when I was 12, 14 years old, I mean, there were times when I was shooting 1,000 shots in a day, 500 shots in a day, but not for a single day. Over the month of June, you're like, of those 30 days, how many times did you shoot 500? Be like, look, I shot 500 or more in 28 of the 30 days. How do I know that? So it's these habits that I think you started to talk about, these little drills where you're doing them regularly, and then you're shooting, because look, you can do all the little drills in the world, but you got to put in the time and the effort. And it started to become almost like a club that we had, where it's about working on your craft every single day. And remember what I said, the backdrop, we couldn't find a pickup game. Sometimes we could try hard. That's not how you were going to improve as a basketball player. You had to become highly skilled. So I think a lot of Blackhawk High School's development stemmed from player development, shooting, and now you get these guys in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade becoming junior high players becoming high school players, staying in the same system, same drills, recording what they did over a long period of time. And the next thing you know, you have magic. You have teams that are winning state championships that, quite frankly, aren't picking from the best population to do so.
So examples of that might be 6:30 in the morning, everybody comes in on the buses. The basketball guys come straight to the gym. The ball rack's right there. You're putting up 100, and we're charting it. Go to homeroom. We're doing 500, during the week, 100 every morning. Then on the weekend, you owe me 500. Okay, so they come back, give me the score. We got 1,000 free throws. We go 13 weeks for football season. All right, football team plays on the weekend. We tally up week 1, week 2, all the way through. Whoever wins on Monday morning, I got food for them. Now, if you got Sean around, or maybe even Arch around, I got to go to the 2nd and 3rd guy because they're going to win it. And the rest of the guys on the team go like, Coach, I got no chance. What's going on here? So we would give the 2nd guy food also. So they get the food on Monday morning. This would go on for 13 weeks. All through the season. Off season, we're working on these. This guy right here, he went from 9th grade through 12th grade, 100 free throws every single day of the year. Easter Sunday, maybe he misses Easter. He's shooting 200 the day before. Or maybe he might have missed, but okay. What do you think his foul shot was senior year in high school? I can give it to you, okay? 93.3.
I was going to say 92.
Okay? 224 for 244. He shot 244 free throws.
Yeah.
He made 224. And hey, it helped us win about 5 extra games.
We do a version of that here. We call it stripe work, and it took me way too long. I wish I would have done it earlier. It's the recording, the discipline.
Yeah.
Because no doubt it wins out. And I think you got it from Steve Alford and his dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that your dad remembers what you shot?
That was 1987.
I've been 87. But
the
there's
year I was born.
So many stories. And then the other thing is, like, he's talking about the pickup games. What I was able to create, we had a nice outdoor court, and I was able to create, like, in the evenings, like if you were playing for me, it was a sin if you didn't go to this outdoor court at night. Just for an hour, hour and a half, pickup games were playing. And so what I would do would be I would say, like, Geneva College was right over the hill from us. They had a really good freshman team the one year Dante played. So I talked to Coach Slocum. I said, Coach, we got good pickup games up on top of the hill here. Why don't you guys send your guys up one of these nights? We'll play. So he does. He goes, hey, I got these 4 freshmen coming. They're really good. They come up. They start playing my team. This is 92 state championship team, right? Dante Calabria. We beat them. We're playing a pickup game. These guys were so mad. They go back down. Slocum calls me up, Coach. They're coming back. your guys in the, And that's what I would do. Like on a Wednesday, I knew I would call Calipari's crew or somebody, and say, hey, look, you guys are afraid to come up to our outdoor court on Wednesday. We got guys up here. My guys are talking junk.
The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Deer Park Roofing, a company that's provided elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. Whether your needs are residential or commercial, like the outstanding work on the Cintas Center, the home of Xavier basketball, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is protect what's important, and what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com. The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Xavier University's Williams College of Business, ranked the #1 online MBA in Ohio once again, and with nationally recognized concentrations in marketing, business analytics, entrepreneurship, and finance. The Xavier MBA advances your career. Classes are offered in part-time, full-time, online, and executive formats. Xavier alums receive a 25% tuition scholarship. Join Greater Cincinnati's largest MBA alumni network. Find out more at xavier.edu/MBA.
You know, Dad, a lot of people have asked me throughout my lifetime, you know, what's your relationship with Calipari? And they do so because we've known him for a long, long time, but you've known him for a lot longer, and clearly the roots go almost family and very, very deep on with our family, but in particular with you. And, you know, I think this is an opportunity to just say, John Calipari, are you related? How do you meet him? How did all that work?
He's as close as anybody could be to our family. Grew up at our house, played with my brother Tim in high school, and followed me around. I used to work for my dad when I first came out. I would play Cal and my younger brother, work them both over. You know, I was the older brother, and unique guy to say the least. He would round up 5 guys, put them all in a car, and they would just go to this local high school and play this. He had all the coaches' names, you know, and telephone numbers in his book. And you know, Monday he'd say, "Hey, we're going to Ambridge."
This is when he's in high school.
He's a high school guy.
Yeah,
he's playing high school basketball. He had all the coaches' numbers, and he'd say, "Hey, look, I got these guys from Moon. We'll come down and play you guys this morning." You know, we're in the summertime, 10 o'clock in the morning. One car, he'd have his guys pile in the car, they would go play. He manufactured his own pickup games, and pretty good player. My brother, same way. They were good, and Cal just grew up. I mean, he was coaching when he was like in 12th grade. Unique individual. And I mentioned that thing about if he could go out to UCLA and get on TV, he's going. I mean, you couldn't get Sean. There's no way. He's going to stay right here and coach. That's sort of how it was, you know, with Cal. But unique, you know, and he grew up right next to 5-Star. Mm-hmm. So he was like the water boy at 5-Star, got to know Garf. Garf took care of him, and that's how that was his stepping stone to getting where he had to get, you know. And here he is. He's still rolling today.
Yep.
It's crazy. I want to go back to something that, Sean, you talk about a lot on this show. And it's something when I was reading about you, getting ready to record this the other day, I was reading something about you and talking about how much you cared about inspiring a love for basketball in the players that you coached and building it up from the grassroots level, not just doing it when you're in high school, but going down to some of the other younger guys too, but really making sure that the players that you're coaching love the game. And Sean, that's been a massive point for you, especially going into this year's team, is that you have a group of guys for next season, 24-25, that love the game. If you've been listening to this show, you know that has been a point that you have hammered home. So, John, I'll start with you, but I'm curious to hear from your perspective on that one. How do you get, as a coach, a player to love the game of basketball?
You know, it's a great question, because almost any place that I coached, it turns out that, like, it seems to be that way. I was at this place called Riverside High School when I first came back. I was there for like 6 years. He was about 2 years old. I came in there, I had this wooden backboard, you know, with a couple ropes tied to the back of it, like. I had my managers, like, take the ropes and put it through the bleachers and pull it up. It was, you know, maybe about 4 feet high. I had him with me, and, you know, he used to be over on the side. And, you know, it was, you know, I just had it where he could. I didn't want him shooting at that big one, because now we got all these bad habits.
Bad habits, yeah.
And my manager was take it up and put it down every day. You know, like, Coach, you got to have the hoop for him. And, you know, like in the afternoon, I had my 5 starters, sometimes 4 starters with me. We were putting shingles on houses. I was making extra money, you know. 4 of these guys were with me. And I had the one guy, Brad Brown, the other day, you know, he's a dentist today, you know, and he said, "Coach, honestly, I remember back," he said, "I was so tired." He said, we were going to play a summer league that night. He said, we were putting shingles on houses all afternoon. He said, I never worked that hard in my life. He said, I'd go home, I'd like sleep for an hour. And then in the evening, we were going to play a summer league game. But it was just, you know, they all laugh. They see me today. It's like, hey, coach, you know, I was that guy. You know, we were in the car. And we would just do, that was something that was going on. You know, our baseball team at Riverside would be in the gym. It would be snowing. A little bit of snow like April, bad weather. And the baseball team would all be in there working out. The basketball guys had the green sweats with the hoods on. We were out on the outdoor court right outside the gym. We were out there playing. Coaches were playing. You know, I was pretty young at the time. And it's just, that's how we did it. Moved on to the next school, was sort of the same way. You know, I wasn't that smart. And I went to this next school, Blackhawk. In my first year, 1-21. I went from like 20 wins at this other school, really looking good. I went over to this Blackhawk. The football guys didn't come out for the team. I went 1-21. And honestly, it wasn't really that bad of a year because, like, they didn't really like basketball when I got there. But, like, after that first year, like, some of these football guys are like, hey, this guy's not too bad. You know, his new coach isn't too bad. They came out. I mean, Greg Best, you know, was one of them. He played for the Steelers. And second year, we went to 14 wins, you know. But it was a long haul in the first early years, but trying to develop a love for the game. That's probably, if you just said, like, what's my secret to success, would be somehow I could get these guys doing a lot of extra little skill things along the way, which eventually turned into, like, the guy became a pretty solid player.
Well, also, it's if you weren't passionate, if you didn't love the game, you could stay around for a while, but you just weren't going to be around for that long. It would overwhelm you. Yeah. So those that didn't love it left. But if you, in fact, started to love the game, then, you know, it's almost like the passion of him would pull you up.
Yeah. It's fun to read about.
When did you ever think that Sean and Arch were going to get into coaching? Like, when did you start to realize that
maybe? I thought you was worrying about playing. Like, I was worrying about him making it as a player, clean up until almost his senior year. We would never, ever talk about college. I mean, like, hey, you're going to get there, man. It's like, hey, we got to keep working. We got to get better next week. Yeah. It was always next week we got to improve. Next week we got to improve. I mean, Arch was only 119 pounds in ninth grade. We got LeVar Arrington playing for our AAU team. He's like this mammoth guy. I mean, Arch was carrying the bags. He was 119 pounds. 3 years later, Arch is running the show for the AAU team, and LeVar's coming off the bench for us. He was going to Penn State for football, so he got away from the hoops a little bit. But it was just sort of how it was every day we're working at it. I actually, as a coach, though, it would sort of drive me crazy. I mean, if these guys weren't at this outdoor court at night, I wasn't normal. You know what I mean? It was just like, I got to figure a way out of getting them there. I mean, I wouldn't get mad at them, but it was just like, and they sort of knew. You didn't show up at this outdoor court.
Put it this way: you weren't going to go play 9 holes instead of going to the outdoor. That could be the last 9 that you played, or you never would play on the outdoor court again. It was an either-or situation.
Jim Canamesa loved the golf. I saw him a few years ago. I was down there. I started messing around with the golf, and I was down there putting on this green, and this guy was way up on the hill walking. I looked up there. I said to myself, like, hey, that's Canamesa. I know that's Canamesa. And he come around, and he finally came down, and he come by the hole, and he just stopped dead. And he goes, I got to see this. He walked down on the hole, and he said, Coach, you're golfing. He he couldn't believe it. Here I was on a golf course,
Doing something other than basketball.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you about the 1996 McDonald's game that you were the head coach of. On that East team, you had some pretty big names, I would say, on that East team. Kobe Bryant was on that team.
Rip Hamilton.
Shaheen Holloway, another coach in the Big East, Seton Hall.
And I think what happened, like a little story on that one was we were short one guy. The big fella from South Carolina played for the
Jermaine O'Neal.
Jermaine O'Neal. I think he was missing. He couldn't get up. And I needed another guy. So I called my wife up back home. I said, go over to the high school, get Arch out of school. So she's looking, she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, he got a dentist appointment or something. I need him up here. I need another guy to scrimmage, okay? He's a junior right now. And so she gets him out. He comes up, he comes walking out there. Now, he's like 140 pounds, and he's probably about 5'9" max as a junior. So you all set, loosen up, we're going to scrimmage. He jumps right in the scrimmage, starts scrimmaging. Kobe Bryant comes over to me afterwards. He said, Coach, this little dude over here, is that your guy? I said, yeah, that's my younger son. He goes, man, he said, man, he can play. I never forgot it. I mean, he said, man, he can really play. He had a big smile on his face, like, wow, this little guy can go. And made my week right there. Made my week. Kobe was fun to, whatever you wanted to do. You wanted him to pass it. He just was that guy, But, over the years now, I had a great Dapper Dan team. I had Alonzo. I had Billy Owens. I had Sean Kemp. I never seen anything like this Sean Kemp.
Yeah, Sean Kemp. I talked about him earlier at his age, his voice, and just it was hard to believe that he would be 16 or 18 or 19 years old.
He's like 18 years old. I never seen
Amazing player.
I'm like,
yeah,
this guy's going straight to the NBA. He's not even going to college. Sean Kemp. It was just like, wow. He wowed me, and then another guy, two other guys. One was Dominic Wilkins. We went to BC camp. This guy was literally slamming about 38 a day. 4 games. He was averaging about 8 slams per game. And he wanted to dunk it on you every time. And I had never seen a high school guy that was like that athletic. He just was unbelievable. Doc Rivers was at the camp that time too. And the other guy, one of Huggins' guys, Antonio Wingfield. You guys see him play? Wow, what a player. 270, 6'9". But I had a good run because really of him, we would be able to do the McDonald game, and he would be the entertainment. He would do the halftime. So here's John Wooden. You know what I mean? I'm sitting right beside Coach Wooden or Morgan Wooden. He was also another guy that I was able to pick up a lot of stuff along the way from all those guys. Isaiah Thomas, the real Isaiah now, right? We went 6 weekends with him because at that time, a high school guy could do the McDonald game every weekend, and they put a rule in only 2. But Isaiah Thomas, I go way back with him because I was riding the Big Mac bus. I'm sitting right with him every weekend. And he'd always say to me, it's not going to be me. I'm going to go to the NBA, Coach. I'm going to make it in the NBA. He was like 12th grade. And the other thing, I don't know if you remember this one, but he would do the halftime of the game when those guys would go in the locker room. So after about the 3rd week, Isaiah Thomas says to the coach, like, hey, Coach, he said, we hear this roar going up at halftime all the time. He said, this little guy, we never get a chance to see him. Could we just watch him do something, So Coach I said, yeah, go ahead and do something, Andrew. He's doing a figure 8. Isaiah gets down on his hands and knees. He's like this far from that ball. He's, and he's like, he's not dribbling that thing, man. He's not dribbling that ball. He can't dribble that low. And, kind of friends with Isaiah didn't have a chance to really see him after that too much because he was playing pro. When we've crossed paths with, you could hardly name them, Bird, Magic, all the Converse guys. Sean's still mad at me today because I was Converse. he wanted to go Nike.
You remember all this stuff?
He has an amazing memory,
Yeah.
for sure.
I am curious, just hearing him talk about all this stuff and knowing that, he pushed you, and to your credit, like, you probably wanted that to a certain extent. Like you talk about falling in love with it and, following this path. And I think to his credit, he was smart enough to know that was probably a good direction to push you. But what does it mean to you today to know that, like, your dad cared that much about, look at the way that your life has played out, and the fact that basketball today is still as prominent a part of it. What does that mean that he cared enough to push you that way?
Yeah, the greatest gift that he gave all of us is just his time. And I think that if you look at the job that he had and how things would be for a high school teacher and a basketball coach who's, incredibly committed, summer was a time where they're either going to make extra money or give you their time. But we spent a ton of time. Pre cell phone, no cell phone, in a car, just riding from point A to point B, gym to home to gym, going to different places. Him as, my dad, but also my high school coach. We spent, hours, just up and down. And, you either talk or it's silence. There isn't a lot. Even the radio was way different back then. You start driving for a while, no channel would really work. So, you're talking, and a lot of the things clearly that I believe in, or, that you try to carry with you today, you learned on those car rides, but we spent a lot of time, for sure. And I'll go back to what I said, in that, I think my dad's gift from a coach's perspective is he was an amazing teacher. He had the passion for the game. You can feel it when he talks, but he had total command. When he said something, it made sense. He was teaching you. You understood right away that what he was showing you worked. It was credible. And, I go back to, like, some of the things we've talked about before, like, you got to have great passion and a work ethic. You got to tell the truth, but you also have to have great command of what you're talking about as a coach. And I think he's made all of us that grew up or learned from him, really aware of, you have to have a real understanding of what you're teaching, because at the end of the day, coach, teacher, there's a real blend there. And even when I, talk to Bobby Hurley and Danny Hurley and those guys, they're a version of how I grew up. They say similar things, that, among the many lessons they learned, having, their dad and their dad as their coach, it's a lot, but it's just like the importance of just the teaching part of it, and I think that's something that's a gift that just keeps giving, right, moving forward.
I think what I tried to give him was sort of like silent assassin. When you watched him in the early years play, he'd come out there. He wasn't really that big, whatever. And he'd say, "Hey, you got this nice little guy here, whatever." In the meantime, he's coming for the kill. Arch was a little different. I had to do it different. He's 10 years back. He was smaller. He was more like me, and so kind of let him get away with a little more. He had a little chip on his shoulder, sort of. He had his brother there, who was good. And so we did it a little different. And I kind of backed off a little bit with Arch, because I'm saying, this guy, he's going down the ACC to play. He can't. He's going to get wiped up if he's not nasty. He's got to be rugged and tough. If you would go with Sean's teammates in high school, they all pretty much felt sorry for him. Because they were like, wow, coach is taking no prisoners with Sean. He would get 40 in a game and I'd be on him, whatever. But there was sort of all these car rides, there was an understanding there, like some of it was a little bit for show, maybe. You know what I mean? I really kind of love you. You know what I mean? I don't hate you. where the second one come around, it was more like I had to hold him back a little bit more. I had a daughter coming right behind him. She was a state player of the year now. These guys didn't get that. Lisa was a big school Pennsylvania state player of the year. We won the state championship by 20. And she had a big game in that one, put her over the top. But I'm just saying they're all different. And so, same way with teaching your players. Dante Calabria, I mean, if he was on your team, you loved him. If he was on the other team, you hated him. You don't want to mess with Calabria. He was an ornery, nasty guy. You know what? He was like 65-2 his junior and senior year for me, so I kind of like him.
It's like you don't get too high, don't get too low. That's what you always talk about, right?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. It's the process too. It's can't get too caught up in what just happened. It's kind of the next day, and that I think that you listen to that so much from a lot of different people and coaches. Tom Brady was just talking about it recently. Just being consumed with the process.
Well, John, we want to thank you very much for coming on the show. We appreciate it. I was told that yesterday was your 58th wedding anniversary.
Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Congratulations.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Congratulations. That's it's great. We're happy to have you here on the show. This is a show we've been waiting on for a while.
Yeah. I mean, you may be surprised to hear this. Me and Paul, we get shots up every day. I've got some of those bad habits that I developed when I was younger. So maybe we wrap this up. We go downstairs and you can take a look. Maybe
I'm always available.
No, this has been fun, man. It's cool to see. We've gotten to know your boy pretty well, and I think getting to know you better, you start to see some things that make a lot more sense with why he is the way he is today, and why he's been as successful as he has been, having you sort of guide him through his entire upbringing. So I think our viewership is going to really get a kick out of this episode, and the fact that you're willing to come on. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I probably won't be on next week's show, so we'll see.
He's getting married.
I'm getting
He's
married
getting
on
married.
Saturday. So depending on the recordings, I'm just gonna say it.
I'm just glad you get a chance to go to your wedding after you go to so many other weddings, and it's like you go once a week.
It's funny. I'll tell this. Shout out to Dylan if Dylan's listening to this. I was at Lizzie, who's my fiance. I was at a wedding on Saturday, and a guy comes up to me and he goes, "Paul Fritchner." I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "Man, I love listening to the Sean Miller podcast." And this was at Lizzie's. One of the teachers at her school was getting married. He goes, "Man, Sean was right. You go to a lot of weddings." I said, "Yeah, well, he doesn't even know I'm at this one on Saturday." So, appreciate it, guys, and look forward to that. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. But thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks, as always, to our presenting sponsor, Deer Park Roofing, the official payroll sponsor of the Sean Miller Podcast, payroll partners, and our friends at TG Solar. This has been another episode of the Sean Miller Podcast.